A young African-American boy rescued the life of a pregnant police officer during a critical moment. He did not realize at the time that his brave deed would not only save her, but would also spark changes that would affect his own family. Before getting into this heartfelt story, viewers were encouraged to share where they were watching from and to subscribe for more inspiring journeys. The busy street was as lively as ever, filled with car horns and chattering pedestrians that blended with the hot morning air. Lucas hurried along the cracked sidewalks, weaving past food sellers and people rushing by. The neighborhood was always full of life, yet a bit chaotic, much like Lucas's own daily routine. In his jacket pocket, the old watch of his father pressed softly against the fabric. Though the watch had long stopped ticking, to Lucas it meant more than just a memory. It was a token of hope. His father's voice echoed in his mind whenever he held it. Never give up on fairness. Even when no one else believed, you must hold on to that belief. His father had been unjustly locked up for a crime he did not commit, leaving Lucas's family to fend for themselves while his mother, Catherine, worked tirelessly at a laundry. Just like any other day, Lucas crossed the busy main street on his way to school, his mind distracted by chores awaiting him at home. He had no inkling that this day would be unlike the rest. At a street corner, he noticed a female officer managing traffic. It was Samantha, a familiar face, one of the few officers Lucas had seen who always smiled at local children. However, today she looked exhausted in her uniform, and her slightly rounded belly clearly showed she was expecting. Lucas thought, she's still out there doing her job, even while pregnant. Samantha stood in the middle of the road, directing cars to halt while a large truck reversed into a side lane. As the truck nearly finished its maneuver, a terrified cry rang out. "Watch out!" Lucas turned and saw a man careening toward them on a bicycle, its handlebars wildly unstable. The bike careened unpredictably while the man shouted, trying to steady himself. Its path was unmistakable. It was coming straight for Samantha, who, with her back turned and concentrating on controlling the traffic, remained oblivious. In that split second, time seemed to slow. Lucas scanned the scene, hoping someone might call out or act, but nobody moved. Several onlookers simply froze, recording the incident on their phones. Without thinking, Lucas dashed forward. "Ma'am, get out of the way!" he yelled, sprinting with all his might toward Samantha. She turned just in time to see the bicycle speeding at her, and before it could hit, Lucas reached her and gently pushed her aside. They both staggered, and Samantha nearly lost her footing. Lucas quickly grabbed her arm to steady her while the cyclist swerved and eventually came to a halt only a few paces away. The bicycle crashed noisily on the pavement, and the rider, though breathing hard, seemed unhurt. A small crowd gathered, whispering among themselves. With one hand protecting her belly, Samantha turned toward Lucas, her face pale, but her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice quivering. "If it weren't for you—" Lucas shook his head, struggling to catch his breath despite his pounding heart. "I just saw you couldn't react in time. Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Samantha shook her head and took a deep breath to regain composure, though Lucas noticed the beads of sweat forming on her forehead. "Maybe you should sit for a bit," Lucas suggested, his eyes full of concern. Reluctantly, Samantha lowered herself onto a nearby step, still cradling her stomach. A skeptical man from the crowd stepped forward. "What is that kid doing? Causing a scene?" Lucas felt the disapproving stares of those around him, but ignored their judgment. He crouched beside Samantha, his face etched with worry. "Are you definitely all right? Should we call an ambulance?" Before Samantha could answer, a firm voice rang out from behind her. "Samantha, are you all right?" Lucas turned to see a tall officer in uniform striding quickly toward them. It was Martin, Samantha's husband and the head of the police force. His worried face showed deep concern as he reached them. Samantha looked up at Martin and said, "I'm okay. This boy just saved me from a serious accident. Without him, things could have been much worse." Martin then turned toward Lucas, his eyes initially full of caution, but softening as he saw the sincere concern on the boy's face. He bent down and placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Thank you, son." "What is your name?" Lucas responded. Quietly, "Lucas." Martin nodded, his expression both serious and kind. "Lucas, you saved my family today. I owe you a huge debt of gratitude." Lucas hesitated for a moment before shaking Martin's outstretched hand, unaware that his simple act of courage that day would change his life forever. Later, Samantha sat on the steps with her hands resting gently on her knees, taking slow, deep breaths. Martin knelt beside her, his eyes full of worry as he asked, "Are you sure you're fine? Do you need to head to the hospital?" Samantha smiled faintly and replied, "I'm really all right, Martin. I'm fine. Thank goodness for Lucas." Glancing over at the boy standing a few steps away, Lucas clutched his backpack straps, feeling unsure of what to do next, yet experiencing a deep relief for having done the right thing. Martin then walked over to Lucas. Although his tall figure loomed over the boy, his earlier suspicion had vanished, replaced by sincere appreciation. "Lucas, I don't know how to properly thank you. If it hadn't been for you, things might have turned out much worse." Lucas simply nodded, at a loss for words. Martin continued, "You did something incredible today. Is there anything I can do as a thank you? Just say the word, anything at all." This unexpected offer left Lucas momentarily stunned. His thoughts raced. Part of him wanted to say he needed nothing because helping Samantha was simply the right thing to do, but then the image of his father, Charles, surfaced in his mind. A man he adored and trusted, now locked up for a crime he did not commit. Swallowing hard, Lucas looked up at Martin with determined eyes, his voice trembling yet firm. "I don't need anything for myself, but I want you to look into my dad's case." Martin paused, surprised by the boy's request. He hadn't anticipated such a heartfelt appeal. Murmurs from the nearby crowd grew louder, and a few puzzled looks were exchanged. "Your dad?" Martin asked, trying to keep his tone even. Lucas nodded, taking a deep breath to collect his courage. "My dad's name is Charles Carter. He was arrested for stealing, but he's innocent. I know he is. Please just check into it." Lucas's voice cracked as he tried to control his emotions. Samantha, now standing, stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Lucas's shoulder, sensing his inner turmoil. "Martin, perhaps we should listen to him," she said softly. Martin stayed silent for a few seconds, clearly weighing his options. Reopening an old case always meant trouble, big trouble. If there had indeed been an error, it could have serious repercussions for his entire department. However, the hope and determination in Lucas's eyes made it impossible for him to dismiss the request outright. Martin knelt down to meet Lucas's gaze and said with firm compassion, "All right, Lucas, I cannot promise anything yet, but I will look into it. Can you tell me more about your dad?" Lucas bit his lip, his eyes glimmering with a renewed sense of hope as he started to tell his story. His father, Charles, was a kind, hard-working man employed at a security firm. One day, he was accused of stealing merchandise from the firm's warehouse. The evidence against him seemed overwhelming. Security cameras captured someone who looked like him, and a co-worker's testimony appeared to back it up. But Lucas knew deep down that his dad could never have done it. Charles had always lived with integrity, working long hours to support his family, and used to say, "I'd rather lose my job than betray my values." Martin listened intently, nodding occasionally, sensing Lucas's deep belief despite knowing it might not be enough to clear his father's name. "Do you remember anything else that might help?" Martin asked. After a moment of thought, Lucas pulled an old watch from his pocket and handed it to Martin. "This is my dad's watch. The day he was arrested, he left it at home. When they later showed me the security video, the person in it wore a watch just like this. I know it wasn't him." Martin examined the watch, his expression growing serious. Although it was a small detail, it might be an important clue. He nodded, as though he had made up his mind. "All right, Lucas. I'll start with this." Before parting ways, Samantha knelt beside Lucas, offering him a warm smile. "Lucas, you're not only brave, but also an exceptional son. Never lose hope." Lucas returned her smile, feeling a comforting warmth for the first time that day as Martin and Samantha departed. Standing quietly, Lucas watched them leave, a small spark of hope igniting inside him, the hope that fairness might finally come for his dad. Later that day, Martin sat in his dimly lit office, the soft glow from his desk lamp illuminating an old case file with the name Charles Carter printed boldly on the cover. This was the case Lucas had mentioned, the warehouse theft from many years ago that led to Charles's incarceration. Martin sighed as he turned through the pages of the original complaint. A valuable shipment had gone missing from the warehouse. Security cameras had captured an image of a man resembling Charles leaving the building that night. Key evidence also included the testimony of another employee who claimed to have seen Charles lingering in the warehouse after closing hours. On paper, everything appeared simple. The evidence was strong, and Charles was convicted with little opposition. But with his years of experience as a detective, Martin knew that the truth often lurked beneath the surface, especially after Lucas's account and the curious detail about the watch, a small yet suspicious clue. Holding the watch in his hand, Martin recalled Lucas's words. "My dad wasn't wearing his watch that day, but the person on the video was." If that was true, someone had likely planted false evidence. Martin summoned the original investigation team from Charles Carter's case, including Officer Toby, who had led the probe. Toby was well known for being tough and for his unconventional methods. "Chief, you really want us to reopen the Carter case?" Toby asked, frowning at the suggestion. "That case has been closed for over a year. I thought everything was set." Martin crossed his arms, his stare intense. "I have received a complaint from the family. There are discrepancies, especially with the video evidence and the witness's statement." Toby shrugged in slight annoyance. "You know, Carter is already serving his time. Reopening this case might just be a waste of effort and could even tarnish our reputation." Martin's tone was calm but determined. "We're not here to protect reputations. We're here to serve justice." Toby paused, then nodded. "All right, Chief, I'll get the reports." Martin noticed Toby's mix of irritation and reluctance as he left, as if the investigation was seen as an extra burden. As Martin dug into the evidence, he found something odd in the surveillance video. The start of the video was clear, but when it showed the figure exiting the warehouse, the frames became strangely blurred. Frowning, Martin wondered whether it was a technical error or intentional tampering. He asked the forensic team to retrieve the original footage, only to discover that the source files had been wiped. Next, Martin tracked down the key witness, George Milton, a former warehouse worker whose testimony had been crucial in convicting Charles. But when Martin contacted George, his reply was unexpected. "I don't want to discuss this any longer." Please don't call me again." George abruptly ended the call, leaving Martin with a bad feeling. It was highly unusual for a primary witness to suddenly withdraw their cooperation. While Martin was struggling to move forward, Lucas unexpectedly appeared at the police station, carrying a small bag. "Uncle Martin, I think this might help," Lucas said as he placed the bag on Martin's desk. Inside, Martin discovered a swipe card, the type used to enter the warehouse. Lucas explained that his dad had mistakenly brought it home before his arrest. My dad said he forgot to return the card that day. If he hadn't used it on the night of the theft, someone else might have exploited it to frame him. Martin inspected the card closely, his eyes lighting up. This could be a crucial clue. The card likely recorded every entry with a timestamp and user identification. Without delay, he handed it over to the technology department for further analysis. Shortly afterward, Martin received an anonymous phone call. A gruff and menacing voice warned him, "Let it go, Martin. If you don't back off from the Carter case, you'll lose more than just your standing." Clutching the phone tightly, Martin felt sweat bead on his forehead. This was the first clear sign that the case was much more complicated than it appeared. There could be a whole web of corruption behind it, or even a larger conspiracy. Still, Martin refused to back down. He knew each step he took would bring him closer to the truth, and perhaps into further danger. Entering the tech room with a tense look, Martin reviewed the swipe card that Lucas had found. It was his only new lead, and he needed to be sure. It held important information. A young technician named Ryan inserted the card into the reader, and the system began logging each use, along with the time and location. "Just hold on while the data loads," Ryan explained. Martin watched the screen intently. Moments later, the data appeared. Martin held his breath when one particular entry caught his eye. The card had last been used at 10:35 on the night of the theft. Frowning, Martin noticed something odd. The user identification did not match Charles's employee number. "What could this mean?" he asked in a serious tone. Ryan glanced up, a bit puzzled. "It looks like someone was impersonating Mr. Charles when using this card." Martin returned to his office, a heavy sense of unease growing. If the card had been misused, then it was likely that the video had been tampered with as well. This deepened his suspicion that the case was being manipulated internally. He reviewed the list of warehouse workers present on that night, and one name kept reappearing: George Milton, the key witness who had retracted his earlier statement. Martin decided he needed to confront George in person. After hours of searching, Martin found himself in front of a rundown apartment building. When George opened the door, his face showed anxiety upon seeing Martin. "I told you I didn't want any part of this," George said with a hoarse voice. Martin gently held the door to keep it open. "I'm not here to trouble you. I just need the truth. If you don't speak now, you may never have another chance. Do you want to carry this guilt for the rest of your life?" George hesitated, his eyes darting as if battling internally, then sighed and invited Martin inside. Seated on a worn chair, George's hands trembled as he began. "They made me say I saw Charles in the warehouse, but really, I didn't see anything. I was just working late, and when the theft happened, I wasn't near the scene." Martin clenched his fists, trying to remain calm. "Who pressured you?" he asked. George shook his head, fear visible in his eyes. "I can't say. It's too dangerous. I've seen what they can do." Martin knew he couldn't force more details from George for the moment, but the confession confirmed that his original testimony had been false. Charles had been framed by those trying to hide a larger secret. Returning to the station, Martin sought out Lieutenant Toby. "Toby, I just spoke with George Milton. He admitted he was forced into giving false testimony. I need an explanation for this," Martin said sharply. Toby met his gaze with a thin-lipped expression. After a long pause, Toby smirked. "Do you really want to know, Martin? Sometimes we have to do what's necessary to close a case." Enraged, Martin slammed his fist on the desk. "Do what's necessary. Do you hear yourself? We're talking about an innocent person's life here." Toby's eyes turned cold as he retorted, "Careful, Martin. Digging into settled cases isn't always wise. Some people prefer the truth to remain hidden." Martin stepped back, his heart heavy. He was no longer just fighting to free Charles. He also faced betrayal from within his own ranks. The next day brought more shocking news. The swipe card data Martin had sent for analysis was completely erased from the system. Someone on the inside had purposely deleted it to stall the investigation. Martin arranged an emergency meeting, but the response was cold silence and vague answers. It was obvious someone was protecting a secret at any cost. That evening, Martin sat alone in his office, the dim light from his desk lamp falling on Charles's case file. He realized that continuing with the investigation would put him at greater risk, but the hope in Lucas's eyes and his desperate request rang clearly in his mind. Clutching the watch Lucas had given him, Martin drew strength from it and resolved, no matter what, I will bring the truth into the open. Stepping out into the cold night, Martin felt the chill weigh on him like a burden. In his hand was the watch Lucas had entrusted to him, the only solid evidence linking him to a case shrouded in dark secrets. Standing outside the station, he called Samantha. "Samantha, I need you. Meet me at home right away. This is important." He said it curtly before ending the call. At home, Martin laid out all the evidence: the tampered video, George Milton's coerced confession, the deleted swipe card logs, and Toby's betrayal. Samantha listened, her face growing more serious. "Martin, you know that if you keep pushing, you'll be up against everyone trying to cover this up." Her voice was low. Martin sighed deeply. "I know, but I can't turn back. Not for Lucas, not for Charles, and not for you. Remember, that boy saved you without thinking of his own safety. I owe him this." Samantha placed her hand on Martin's shoulder, her eyes filled with determination. "Then let's face this together. For Lucas, for everyone who might be next." Martin grasped her hand tightly. With her support, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. The following morning, Martin sought Lucas out. The boy was sitting on the steps of his modest apartment, his face lighting up at the sight of Martin. "Uncle Martin, do you have any news?" Lucas asked with bright hope in his eyes. Martin sat beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Lucas, I need your help. This might be dangerous, but I can't do it alone." Lucas nodded immediately, resolve plain on his young face. "What do you need me to do?" Martin handed Lucas a picture of George Milton. "I need you to speak with this man again. He's scared, but if it's you talking, maybe he will tell the truth." Lucas studied the photograph before looking back with resolve. "I'll do it for my dad. For you," he said. Under Martin's watchful gaze from a distance, Lucas approached George's apartment. When George opened the door and saw the young boy, his surprise was evident, yet he did not close the door. "Mr. Milton, I'm Lucas, Charles Carter's son," Lucas said softly yet firmly. "My dad doesn't deserve to be locked away for something he didn't do. I can't fix this on my own, but you can. If you don't tell what really happened, the truth will remain hidden forever." George hesitated, then stepped back, signaling Lucas to come in. Lucas locked eyes with him, his voice trembling with emotion. "Mr. Milton, I know you're scared, but can you let them hurt you forever if you stay silent? If we don't stand up, who will?" His words hit George hard. After a long pause, George agreed. "All right, Lucas. I'll speak the truth, but I need protection." Lucas smiled with hope. "I'll inform Uncle Martin. You will be safe." The next day, under the safeguard of Martin and an established investigative team, George came forward at the police station with a new statement. He revealed that Toby had forced him to lie, had tampered with the video, and had arranged the evidence that framed Charles. Toby accepted money from a criminal group to steal that shipment, George said bitterly. Charles was just an easy target because he used to work as a security guard there. Martin listened, his fists clenching as the pieces of the puzzle finally began to fit. Toby hadn't just betrayed his fellow officers. He had ruined an innocent man's life to save his own skin. Martin decided to confront Toby directly. He found Toby in a meeting room, casually flipping through files as if everything were normal. "Toby," Martin said firmly, "I have enough evidence of your lies, your false evidence, and your corruption to put you in court." Toby looked up with a smirk. "What now, Martin? Another lecture?" Martin placed George's statement on the table, his eyes burning with anger. "I have everything I need to take you to justice. Your lies, your fake evidence, and your greed end now." Toby chuckled darkly. "You really think you can bring me down? This department needs people like me, not idealists like you." Martin stepped closer, locking eyes with Toby. "Justice doesn't call for people like you. You've made this system a disgrace, and I will set it right." As Toby tried to leave, Martin's team blocked the door. Toby was handcuffed immediately, and Martin watched him intently until he was led away. Later, Martin stood by his office window, watching the morning light spill over the tall buildings. Despite Toby's arrest, the relief was tempered by the heavy work ahead. In the past days, Martin had meticulously prepared evidence, collaborated with a trusted team, and organized witness statements, especially George Milton's. Finally, everything was in place. Today, Charles Carter's case would be revisited in a special hearing. Martin understood that this wasn't just about freeing Charles, but also about sending a message that the truth matters, no matter the risks. Lucas, his mother Catherine, and Martin entered the courtroom together. Lucas clutched his mother's hand tightly while watching his father, Charles, escorted in chains. Charles's face was tired, yet his eyes sparkled with faith upon seeing his family. Martin stepped forward and gently placed a hand on Charles's shoulder, whispering, "Today is your day. I will do everything I can to bring you home." Charles nodded, his voice calm but low. "I trust you, Martin, and I trust Lucas." The hearing began, and the tension in the courtroom was thick. The prosecution showed the old evidence, insisting that the surveillance video and earlier testimonies were beyond dispute. When it was Martin's turn to speak, he stepped up with confidence tempered by precision. "Your Honor, I ask for a review of the evidence in this case. The original evidence was altered by someone within our own system." He explained how the video had been doctored, the swipe card records erased, and, most importantly, shared. The new testimony from George Milton, who had been coerced into lying. George was called to the stand. Though nervous at first, he grew more composed when he saw Lucas in the back. "My original testimony was not truthful," George confessed, his voice shaking but clear. "I was threatened and forced by Lieutenant Toby to claim I saw Mr. Charles Carter at the scene, when in fact I saw nothing." George's confession sent ripples through the courtroom. The prosecution tried to challenge him, but Martin quickly presented more evidence showing that Toby had accepted bribes from criminals to fabricate the case. Martin ended his argument firmly. "No one has the right to steal an innocent person's freedom for their own gain. Charles Carter has lost more than a year of his life due to this injustice, and today I ask for his freedom and dignity to be restored." After a long moment of silence, the judge declared, "Based on the new evidence and witness testimony, we overturn the conviction of Mr. Charles Carter. He shall be released immediately." Lucas cried quietly as he watched his father's chains come off. Charles embraced Catherine and Lucas tightly, tears flowing while a smile lit up his face. "I always knew you would never give up on me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Toby, unable to hide the truth any longer, faced multiple charges for tampering with evidence, taking bribes, and abusing power. His case not only exposed individual corruption, but shook the entire system. Despite intense pressure, From former colleagues, Martin stayed focused on his mission to clean up the system. He received steady support from Samantha, who remained by his side through every twist and turn. A few days later, Martin visited the Carter home, a modest apartment where Charles was fixing old furniture and rearranging neglected items. "Martin, I owe you so much," Charles said, gratitude shining in his eyes. Martin smiled and replied, "You owe me nothing. The one who truly made this change is Lucas. That boy taught me that justice must always be spoken for." Lucas hugged Martin tightly. "Thank you, Uncle Martin. You gave my family everything back." Meanwhile, Samantha helped Catherine secure a steadier job at a small local office, and Charles accepted a position as a maintenance worker at the police department, a chance to rebuild his life. Inspired by everything his family had gone through, and driven by his belief in fairness, Lucas decided he would one day become a lawyer. The old watch, now fixed, came to symbolize the Carter family's journey from darkness into light. That day, the sun peeked out from behind the worn-down buildings of their neighborhood, but its light felt warmer than ever. After a long period of living in the shadows, the Carter family finally found peace in their little apartment. Laughter filled the room as Lucas helped his father sort out old belongings. Free from the weight of his past, Charles carefully polished the old watch, a reminder of patience and hope during his darkest times. "This watch carried us through the hardest moments," Charles said, his eyes shining as he handed it to Lucas. "Now it is yours." Lucas fastened it to his wrist and said, "I will never forget what our family has endured, and I will keep this hope alive." At the police station, Charles began his new job as a maintenance man. Although the position was humble, it marked a profound, fresh start. Martin visited him often to encourage him, and Samantha sometimes brought along snacks. With Samantha's help, Catherine found a stable job that spared her the long, exhausting hours of her previous work. Life for the Carter family gradually returned to normal, but now they lived with deep thankfulness and optimism. Lucas soon became not just the pride of his family, but a local hero. A picture of him assisting Samantha went viral online, earning widespread admiration for his courage. His school recognized his extraordinary act by awarding him a special scholarship to support his future goals. One afternoon, Lucas visited the station to thank Martin, carrying a small notebook filled with lessons learned during their journey. "Uncle Martin, thank you for believing in me. I will never forget what you and Samantha have done for my family," Lucas said, his eyes shining. Martin looked over the notebook with pride. "Lucas, you have taught me an invaluable lesson. Never stop fighting for justice, no matter how tough the road." That evening, the Carter family gathered around their simple, warm dinner table. Catherine laughed as Charles and Lucas playfully argued over whose gift wrapping was better. Then Lucas announced, his tone serious, "I have been thinking about everything we've been through. I want to help others who are treated unfairly. I want to become a lawyer." Charles placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his eyes moist. "Lucas, I know you can do it. You will fight for justice not only for our family, but for many who have no one to speak for them." Catherine smiled broadly. "My son, I am so proud of you. We will always support you." A few weeks later, Martin set up a meeting for Lucas with an organization offering free legal support to those in need. There, Lucas met Rachel, a well-known lawyer renowned for her commitment to justice. "So, you must be Lucas," Rachel said, with a friendly smile, shaking his hand. "Martin has told me so much about you. Your story is truly inspiring. We need more people like you." Lucas, though a bit nervous, replied with determination, "I just want to learn and help others. I believe even a small effort can make the world better." Rachel exchanged a knowing look with Martin and Samantha, then said, "Let's get started today. We will prepare you for your journey." As Lucas stepped out of the building, he looked up at the bright blue sky. His father's watch sat firmly on his wrist as a reminder that this journey was not just about him. It was for his entire family and community. Martin and Samantha watched him leave from the curb. Samantha leaned toward Martin and whispered, "That boy is destined for greatness." Martin nodded, his eyes shining with pride. Yes, Lucas isn't just courageous, he represents change. With every step, Lucas felt a new future unfolding, a future where he wouldn't just retell his story, but write new chapters filled with justice, hope, and courage. Lucas then entered the office of the Free Legal Support Organization for the very first time. The space was small yet organized, with walls decorated by photos of successful cases and the lives they had touched. Ms. Rachel, whom he had met just the week before, greeted him at the reception with a warm smile. "Lucas, welcome. Let's begin," she said kindly. Lucas nodded, feeling both nervous and excited. This day marked the start of his volunteer work. Although his role initially involved data entry and filing, it was the first step toward his dream of becoming a lawyer. Over the next several weeks, Lucas learned how to manage documents, take careful notes during depositions, and get acquainted with legal procedures. He often stayed late, studying case files, to truly understand the struggles of those the organization had helped. One day, Miss Rachel presented a new set of case files and placed them before Lucas. "These are the cases we're handling right. Now, pick one that catches your eye, and we'll discuss it," she said. Lucas flipped through the pages, his eyes lighting up as he read about individuals who had endured great hardship, yet shown remarkable resilience. He paused at one case, a single father who had lost custody of his child because of a wrongful accusation of domestic violence. "Miss Rachel, this case is so similar to my dad's. This person really needs help," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. Ms. Rachel smiled and replied, "Excellent choice, Lucas. Let's work on this together. We will help him get the justice he deserves." Lucas quickly proved himself to be insightful and determined. He helped spot flaws in the evidence, conducted interviews with witnesses under Ms. Rachel's careful guidance, and even suggested ideas that the attorneys had missed. After a meeting about the case one day, Ms. Rachel called Lucas into her office. "Lucas, you have incredible potential, but potential must be nurtured. Would you like to attend a basic legal skills course? I will cover all of the expenses." Lucas could hardly believe his ears, and with wide eyes filled with excitement said, "I would love to. Thank you so much." Outside his work at the organization, Lucas often returned to his old neighborhood, sharing his family's story with friends and local kids. One day, he stood before a group of community students and talked about his journey. "I used to feel worthless in this big world, but thanks to my family and those who supported me, I learned that each one of us can make a difference. Justice isn't some far-off ideal. It starts with your courage," Lucas said. His words resonated deeply with the audience. He had transformed from a shy kid walking down narrow alleys to a beacon of hope for many. Later, at the small apartment they called home, Charles, Catherine, and Lucas sat together after dinner. Charles smiled as he looked at his son. "Lucas, you have achieved more than I ever dreamed. Have you considered continuing your studies to become a professional lawyer?" Lucas gripped his father's hand firmly and answered, "I have made up my mind, Dad. I will do everything possible to get into law school. I want to help people like you, those who have been treated unfairly and have no voice." Catherine smiled with misty eyes. "My son, you prove that we can change anything if we persist." 5 years later, Lucas graduated from law school with highest honors, supported by the legal organization and a special scholarship. On graduation day, he received a letter from Martin and Samantha. "Dear Lucas, we always believed you would reach great heights, but more importantly, you have kept your heart pure and your spirit for justice strong. We are very proud of you. Keep moving forward and never forget what you have done for your family and for us. With love, Martin and Samantha. Reading the letter filled Lucas with a deep sense of achievement. He had not only met his own goals, but had also become a symbol of hope and change, just as Martin had envisioned. Yet his story did not end there. As a passionate young lawyer, Lucas returned to his neighborhood and opened a small legal office to help those less fortunate. Each day he looked at the fixed watch his father had given him, remembering the hardships they had overcome. He understood that justice was not merely an abstract idea. With enough determination and courage, it was attainable by everyone. Over time, the story of Lucas and the Carter family became an inspiration not only in their own neighborhood, but throughout the city. Now a respected lawyer, Lucas devoted his life to assisting the voiceless. His modest law office in the old neighborhood became a beacon of hope for anyone seeking fairness, regardless of who they were. One morning, while Lucas was sorting through some case files, an elderly woman entered the office. Though her face was tired, her eyes shone with resolve. "Mr. Carter," she said in a trembling voice, "I need your help." Lucas invited her to sit down and listened carefully as the woman, named Irene, explained that her family had lost their home due to an unfair lawsuit. A large corporation had manipulated documents to seize their property, and the local court had rejected her appeal. Frowning at the injustice in her story, Lucas replied, "I will help you, but this case is very complex. We are going to be up against a powerful opponent." Lucas sought guidance from Martin, now retired, but still a mentor to him. "Martin, this case is really tough. The company has both money and influence. I worry I might not be able to fight them," Lucas admitted hesitantly. Martin placed a firm, reassuring hand on Lucas's shoulder, his eyes radiating confidence. "Lucas, you have overcome much tougher challenges. Remember, justice is never simple, but it is always worth fighting for. You are not just fighting for Mrs. Irene, you are standing up for everyone too afraid to speak out." Martin's words rekindled Lucas's determination. He gathered a team of passionate young lawyers at his office to take on the case. The legal battle lasted many months, marked by heated courtroom exchanges. Lucas's team worked tirelessly to collect evidence, find witnesses, and combat the company's sneaky tactics. Whenever doubt crept in, Lucas thought of his family and remembered the promise he made never to let anyone endure the same injustice his father had suffered. Finally, after many arduous hearings, the verdict was delivered. Mrs. Irene and her family were awarded the return of their home and compensation from the corporation. Overcome with emotion, Mrs. Irene clutched Lucas's hands and said, "You have not only saved my family, you have restored my faith in justice." Lucas smiled, filled with deep relief and fulfillment. He knew that this victory was not just for one family. It was a powerful message that fairness still exists. Lucas's office continued to grow, evolving into a center not only for legal work, but also for training young, dedicated lawyers. He organized free workshops for local residents, educating them about their rights and how to protect themselves. One day, a timid boy of about 12 knocked on the office door and shyly said, "I want to learn how to be like you. Will you teach me?" Lucas looked at him, seeing his younger self reflected in the boy's eyes, and smiled warmly. "Of course. But first you must understand that to do this, you need courage and a genuine heart. Are you ready?" The boy nodded, his eyes filled with determination. Years later, the tale of Lucas Carter became more than just a story about a wrongful case or one legal battle. It became a symbol of bravery, belief, and how even small acts of kindness can change the world. The old watch, a gift from his father, now rested in a glass case at his office, a constant reminder that every great journey begins with courage. Lucas not only became a successful lawyer, but he also grew into a mentor and friend for those in need. His legacy continued to light up lives, inspiring generations to come. As time went on, Lucas Carter's law office grew into a symbol of hope in the old neighborhood. People no longer hesitated or feared standing against injustice, knowing there was a place where Lucas and his team fought for fairness. One day, Lucas received a letter from the Global Fairness Network, an international group of lawyers committed to helping the oppressed worldwide. They invited him to join their advisory board, believing that his local fight for justice could inspire global change. "Your story can light the way for efforts across the world," the letter said. In his modest office, Lucas read the letter repeatedly, feeling both proud and hesitant. Joining the network would mean leaving the neighborhood that had shaped him. He organized a meeting with his team, including the young lawyers he had guided. "I want your thoughts on this opportunity," Lucas said softly. "It might open a new chapter, but I worry that if I leave, we may lose the strong bond we have with this community." One of his colleagues, Claire, stepped forward with admiration in her eyes. "Lucas, you have inspired all of us. If you leave, we will continue what you started. This office will keep its spirit because you built a legacy stronger than any one person." Moved by Claire's words, Lucas realized he was not alone in his mission. A few weeks later, Lucas accepted the invitation from the Global Fairness Network. Before he left, he organized a neighborhood gathering to express his gratitude and say farewell. At the event, Martin and Samantha were present, bringing a small framed photo of Lucas with his family on the day Charles was freed. Martin smiled and said, "Lucas, you are not only our pride, but a symbol of change. You have proven that no matter where we start, we can achieve great things if we never give up." Samantha added, "And remember, wherever you go, your heart will always be with us." Lucas's throat tightened as he held the photo and replied, "I will never forget everything you have done for me and my family. This isn't the end. It's just the start of a new chapter." Lucas then began working with the Global Fairness Network, traveling to regions where injustice ran rampant and legal systems were nearly absent. In one small village in Africa, he helped a group of women reclaim stolen land. In Southeast Asia, he and his team fought for children trapped in exploitative labor. Wherever he went, Lucas left behind more than legal victories. He sowed seeds of hope and belief in fairness. One day, Lucas returned to his old neighborhood and was amazed to see a mural painted near his law office. It portrayed Lucas standing among his community, his hand raised high as a symbol of justice. A local resident approached with a warm smile, saying, "We want everyone to remember that no matter where you go, your spirit stays with us." Lucas touched the mural, feeling a deep warmth in his heart. Although the journey ahead was still long, he knew he had fulfilled his father's lifelong wish to make the world a fairer place. Lucas Carter had become a well-known name not only in the global legal community, but also in the hearts of the people in his childhood neighborhood. What he left behind was not just a record of legal triumphs, but a belief that with courage and persistence, justice can reach everyone, regardless of their origins. During his time with the Global Fairness Network, Lucas built a network of young lawyers, social activists, and visionary leaders. Together, they launched many legal aid and education projects to empower marginalized communities to defend themselves against injustice. One day, Lucas received a call from his trusted colleague, Claire, her voice a mix of joy and nervous excitement. "Lucas, there's someone here who really needs to meet you. He said you inspired him to pursue justice." Intrigued, Lucas went back to his old office the next day and found a young man waiting. The boy looked nervous, but his eyes brightened when he saw Lucas. "My name is Noah, Mr. Carter," the young man said. "I met you when I was very little, and ever since, I've wanted to be like you." Noah explained that he had just finished law school and was eager to join Lucas's team to learn. He recalled how years ago, Lucas's talk about his journey to fight for his father had changed everything for him. Lucas smiled, nodded, and said, "Noah, if you want to help others, you are ready. Justice doesn't wait for perfection, it waits for action." Noah quickly demonstrated his dedication and competence as Lucas began assigning him smaller cases, always offering guidance along the way. Noah not only honed his legal skills, but also learned that patience and empathy are key to earning a community's trust. One day, as Lucas and Noah worked on a tricky land dispute case, Noah said, "Now I understand, Mr. Carter. We aren't just lawyers. We are bridges connecting the silent to justice." Lucas nodded, beaming with pride. "Exactly, Noah. I believe you will become even greater than I am." As Noah took on more cases, Lucas felt that he had achieved one of his greatest goals, passing on his spirit and skills to the next generation. His law office now had a team of young lawyers, each with their own unique stories, but united by a common goal: to create a fairer world. Lucas decided to write a book called Where Justice Begins. The book wasn't just a memoir of his life. It was a message to anyone feeling powerless in the face of unfairness. Once you start, justice will follow. The book became very popular, taught in law schools and community programs alike. Even though Lucas traveled far and wide, he always returned to his family. Charles, now retired, often sat on the porch tinkering with old tools, while Catherine, with her warm smile, always welcomed Lucas with a home-cooked meal. "Mom, Dad, it feels like everything is just beginning," Lucas said one day as the family gathered around the table. Charles laughed and patted his son's shoulder. "That's right, Lucas, but remember, starting can be the hardest part. You already have the strength to keep going." Years later, as Lucas stood before a classroom of future lawyers, he saw the same spark in their eyes that he once had. "At times, the world may seem too vast and the injustice overwhelming," he told them, "but always remember that change starts with small actions. One brave choice, one right decision, a voice that refuses to be silenced." Lucas finished his lecture with, "Justice isn't something we find, it's something we build, and you will be the ones to build it." As he left the classroom, Lucas felt a deep sense of peace, knowing his story was no longer just his own, but part of a much larger journey, a journey of generations carrying the torch of fairness forward. After many years with the Global Fairness Network, Lucas had traveled to dozens of countries, tackling injustices from defending indigenous rights in the Amazon to freeing victims of forced labor in South Asia. Yet every time he closed a case, he felt both triumphant and humbled by the knowledge that millions still needed help. One day, while writing a report in a small office in Kenya, Lucas received a call from Claire. "Lucas, there is a new case you need to address. This time, it concerns workers being terribly mistreated at a large factory in the United States. It appears they are not only exploiting labor, but are also involved in high-level corruption." Lucas sighed, his determined eyes showing no hesitation. "Send me all the details, Claire. I will fly back immediately." On returning home, Lucas now felt both familiar comfort and growing tension. This case was not only legally complex, it also involved powerful political and economic forces. Lucas quickly gathered his team, including Noah and other young lawyers, and began the investigation. They discovered that the factory had not only violated labor laws, but had also used intimidation to silence workers during meetings.